Buenos días. Espero que hayan tenido un buen día. Muchas gracias por sumarse temprano nuevamente a la sesión de hoy. Veo que siguen llegando nuestros colegas. Muchas gracias por la puntualidad. Con nosotros tenemos hoy día a Melina Kolb, que es Assistant Vice President for Digital Communications at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. Eh, Como todos los días, empezaremos primero con un pequeño resumen de la sesión anterior y luego pasaremos a hacer la introducción completa a Melina, pero muchas gracias por estar acá, Melina. Eh, entonces, bueno, excelente, María Fernanda, ¿qué tal el resumen que nos has preparado hoy día? Eh, Adelante, por favor.
No sé si lo pueden ver.
Sí, está perfecto.
Ok, perfecto. Entonces, buenos días a todos. Muchísimas gracias, Andrea y María José, por darme la oportunidad de presentar el resumen de la clase de ayer. Personalmente me encantó y sobre todo quiero aprovechar para agradecer y perfiles de participantes en cada día, de cada día. Entonces, bueno, el día de ayer y muy rápido, eh, vimos a través de Jimena Leiva del International Peace Institute, hablamos sobre liderazgo, juntas directivas y financiamiento. Aquí seleccioné una serie de ideas principales que siguen un poquito la metodología de Design Thinking que ayuda a escoger de pronto 3 ideas centrales para desarrollar ciertas estrategias progresivas. Pero obviamente han sido escogidas con mi criterio. Yo creo que en la clase todos tendrán diferentes aspectos o adicionales aspectos que seguramente pueden integrar y fortalecer, de tal manera que si es que alguien quiere complementar algo que no lo estoy considerando, por favor adelante, ¿ok? Bien, Jimena Leiva es Head del Instituto de Paz y Sustentabilidad y del Desarrollo Ambiental y de Paz del International Peace Institute. Algo que me gustó es que su nacionalidad es de Guatemala, entonces tiene una sincronía y un entendimiento de la realidad que vivimos en América Latina y con especial énfasis en Centroamérica, y tiene una buena práctica, sólida práctica en diplomacia internacional. Algo que me gustó muchísimo es que a través de un diálogo interactivo pudimos perfilar muy bien cuáles son el tipo de think tank que tenemos en nuestro workshop que estamos desarrollando, y pudimos identificar que la mayoría son think tanks jóvenes, y resaltó muchísimo la oportunidad que esto implica para integrar prácticas que ya think tanks anteriores han vivido, se han dado cuenta que han fallado o que han sido un éxito y que podemos capitalizarlas. De tal manera que integrar soluciones en la formación y madurez de nuestros think tanks nos puede ayudar a ganar muchísimo tiempo. Desde el punto de vista de estrategia general, Jimena resaltó muchísimo la importancia que debe tener la importancia del propósito y la misión que debe tener un think tank, bien delineado y bien definido. Cuando nosotros tenemos un propósito o misión bien definidos, los objetivos son claros y son los objetivos que nos van a acompañar en la madurez de nuestro think tank. Algo que también es importante es esclarecer una estructura de gobernanza que al mismo tiempo es flexible. ¿Por qué? Porque aplicamos la teoría del cambio muy ligada a la realidad de nuestro contexto geopolítico en general, de tal manera que esta gobernanza y su flexibilidad en la manera de gestionar nuestro think tank le va a dar mucha agilidad para poder responder ante los cambios que se presentan, por ejemplo, una crisis como el COVID. Y algo que también se resaltó fue el tomarle el pulso al contexto estratégico, operativo y geopolítico para ir con la teoría del cambio, ir haciendo los ajustes progresivos que nuestro think tank podría tener. Entonces, el primer tema que profundizamos fue el liderazgo. Y para efectos del Instituto de Paz Internacional, que es un instituto que tiene un perfil más corporativo, hablábamos del Chief Executive Officer, que realmente es el director general de nuestro think tank. ¿Qué perfil debe tener este ejecutivo, este líder? Debe ejemplificar la misión, debe recoger, su perfil debe recoger, integrar la misión de nuestro think tank. El perfil, este perfil también ayuda a que se fortalezca la credibilidad, debe tener mucha credibilidad y sobre todo un conocimiento del área en el que opera el think tank para que pueda haber un balance entre la estrategia y la operación. Una característica súper importante de este perfil es su capacidad de networker, es decir, de crear alianzas que amplifique esa independencia de financiamiento, ya que este director opera el pipeline de financiamiento de nuestros proyectos. Esto de alguna manera ayuda este perfil ayuda de alguna manera a asentar la forma en que se va a construir el financiamiento orgánico. Obviamente también hay el inorgánico, pero acá lo importante es que este líder tiene todas estas campos de acción. Y luego hablamos sobre las juntas directivas, que trae, de acuerdo al perfil que lo conforman, trae prestigio, sobre todo por la transparencia y la ética. Son un brazo de levantamiento de fondos de manera orgánica con base a la misión, es decir, están enfocados en el core funding, y también definen las líneas estratégicas y su adaptación a los contextos del ecosistema en el que opera el think tank. Algo que es importante es que los miembros de estas juntas directivas toman mucho el pulso de la realidad nacional, global, a las agendas globales y locales, y de alguna manera van reconduciendo las adaptaciones estratégicas de nuestro think tank. Luego hablamos sobre el financiamiento, y uno de los temas que se resalta de manera constante es mantener la autonomía intelectual, la neutralidad en el posicionamiento y la reputación de nuestro think tank. También hablamos del equilibrio entre el core funding y el project funding, que también podría hablarse del organic funding o el inorganic funding, lo cual nos permite tener en cuenta que debemos tener una estrategia de financiamiento constante, sostenido, pero al mismo tiempo inorgánico con aquellas oportunidades de funding que se den de acuerdo al contexto. Importante diversificar el mecanismo de financiamiento. Aquí Jimena nos habló de un consejo consultivo de mujeres, por ejemplo, en donde se integra un brazo adicional como un consejo consultivo también de expertos con transparencia, con ética, pero que su perfil está seleccionado de manera estratégica para que sean brazos extendidos de financiamiento. Conclusiones generales: la gobernanza única, el financiamiento nunca debe ser más importante que el propósito del think tank, y luego mantener un equilibrio de representatividad en las juntas directivas es muy importante para efectos de no posicionarlo por una línea política específica, sino amplificar y ser muy inclusivos, con una visión muy estratégica de la inclusión, para que nuestro think tank tenga esa versatilidad de fondeo por distintas líneas políticas o de objetivos de política pública en general. Entonces, este es el resumen que le identifiqué valor. No sé si es que alguien quiere añadir algo adicional.
Muchas gracias, María Fernanda, por este resumen, además muy lindamente presentado. No sé si es que alguien más quiere agregar algo, y perdón un segundito antes, I need to speak in English right now because I think Melina was not able to hear what you were just saying. So just a message, Daniela, if you can translate this part, and then we'll switch back to English to Spanish translation. Right. ¿Alguien más que quiera agregar a lo que comentó María Fernanda del resumen de los perfiles, de la relación entre el perfil del director con la credibilidad, con el financiamiento? Me llamó mucha atención el ejemplo también, como comentabas, de cómo igual se lanzaron a cambiar a su directora pues, por temas éticos a pesar de el financiamiento que traía. Eh, no sé qué opinan las más, si es que una vez se han encontrado con algún dilema ético con el director o algo, o un caso similar, o algo más que alguien quiera comentar respecto a la sesión de ayer. No, bueno, si no tenemos más resúmenes, Fernanda, muchísimas gracias por esto. Quería pedir si nos podías mandar para poder sumarlo a las notas que tenemos de las sesiones. Todo esto después, las notas de ustedes, más las notas que tomamos nosotros, las juntamos en un reporte que editamos y se los entregamos al final del school para que tengan un resumen de lo que sucedió todos los días. Es un resumen co-construido entre todos. Y con eso nos falta una persona para el resumen de mañana. No sé si es que hay alguien que quiera voluntariarse para hacer el resumen de mañana. David y Ana. ¿Qué tal si lo pueden hacer los dos? Creo que podemos tomar un nuevo modelo y hacer como un co-resumen. Entonces tenemos a David y a Ana para el resumen de mañana. Y con eso, ahora sí ya pasamos a introducir a Melina y voy a cambiar a inglés. Sorry, Melina, we tend to do the summaries in Spanish because that's the main language for everybody now. But I'm glad that the translation worked out in the end. And thank you for being here with us, Melina. Melina, oh my God, I have your bio in Spanish. I'm going to say that in Spanish. Melina Kolb es una experta en comunicación y producción digital que ha trabajado en el campo de ONGs y Thinktankers desde el 2009. Ha trabajado en proyectos con USAID y la Fundación de las Naciones Unidas y anteriormente fue gerente de programación para una agencia de marketing global. Se unió al Peterson Institute en el 2017 como productora de contenido y desde entonces ha sido promovida para liderar la estrategia de difusión digital. Melina Kolb tiene un MS en periodismo de Northwestern University y es bachiller en antropología de la Universidad de Chicago. We're very glad to have you here. She has really cool and interesting ideas on content strategies, and I hope you have seen the video that with the quick tips for a dissemination strategy. And with that, I leave you with Melina, and I'm pretty excited for the session today. So over to you, Melina. Thank you.
Hi, buenos dias. Let me go ahead and start my presentation. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about how to develop effective and feasible content strategy. And so just a little bit about myself. As Andrea said, I'm the Assistant Vice President for Digital Communications at the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington, D.C. I studied journalism. I majored in interactive storytelling. I used to run a video production company, helping nonprofits. I also help manage marketing campaigns for Fortune 500 company. And I started at Thinktankers as a digital content producer. So I've been involved a long time with writing and creating creative products to help communicate research. And why I like think tank communications, I like it a lot because I get to be a creative nerd, kind of combining both creative side and analytical side to help improve the world. So first, let me just talk a little bit about what is content. What am I talking about when we say content strategy too? So content is any medium that is consumed by audiences to understand your research. So traditionally, this means, your policy briefs or papers, books, written reports. We have news interviews, we have live events. These days, we have the less traditional examples. We have blog posts, we have social media. Nowadays, virtual events are everywhere. So the universe of content has really expanded. And so when we talk about content strategy, it's really about who do we want to consume our content? Which topics should we create content on? What are the goals? How often should we publish content? What formats do we use? Where does the content get published? How do we make the best use of limited resources? And how do we improve engagement with our content? So I would like to learn a little bit more about who I'm speaking to. So I have a couple of questions here that I will quickly share. Okay, so you should see a couple of poll questions here that you can answer. The first one is just asking you how experienced you are in think tank communications. The second question is how big is your organization? And then the third question is, what are some of the challenges that your communications team faces when it comes to producing content? So I'll just give you a minute to go ahead and answer those. Okay, just a few more seconds here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end that poll.
Wait, I think
we got a couple more people. Okay.
Yeah, there's 18 out of 25 that have replied.
Okay.
And, I see that they keep coming.
So okay, I will try to be a little more patient.
I know it's very difficult when you do a poll when you people, because you have this couple of minutes of emptiness that's difficult to fill. Okay, I think we are done, because the rest of participants probably are the staff that are part of the hearing.
Okay. So, okay, so we have about an even number of people who are new and have maybe 1 or 2 years of experience, and some people in mid-career, and then we have about a quarter of you guys are very experienced. And then as far as the size of your organization, it looks like most of you work somewhere that has either under 10 employees or 11 to 30. One of you works at a bigger organization. My organization is about 60 people. And then challenges you guys face. So, okay, we have lack of staffing resources, definitely a big one there. Looks like the second one is expanding audiences. So getting more people to read your stuff. We have coming up with new ideas, and then decision-making on where to invest efforts, followed by all of the above. I can say personally, we experience problems with all of these in varying degrees. I guess this is encouraging. Only a few, or one of you said that you have a problem with getting buy-in or respect or approval from researchers. So that's good to hear. Finding out about things too late. Also good that most of you are all on the same page with that. Okay, so let me return back to this. Okay, so on that last question, I was wondering if any of you would like to volunteer to talk a little bit more about what kind of challenges your team faces and what you're hoping to get from this session. So if maybe one or two volunteers want to speak up about something you guys are having trouble with when it comes to producing content.
Ana, you can go ahead.
Bueno, voy en español. Quizás lo que tenemos como reto ahora es el tema de la pandemia. O sea, ya vamos para más de año y medio con el tema de la pandemia y quizás eso, bueno, al menos nosotros sentimos que empieza a impactar. Sentimos que la gente como está un poco desinteresada. En nuestra organización hacemos videos, podcasts, infografías, o sea, hacemos muchísimas cosas, somos muy poquitos. O sea, nuestra organización tiene menos de 10 personas, con lo cual somos muy pocas personas haciendo mucho. Entonces, quizás el reto más importante que estamos enfrentando ahora es el hartazgo que tiene la gente. Así lo sentimos por las comunicaciones digitales y bueno, yo vuelo con mi misma coletilla, cómo decir las cosas importantes de nuestras investigaciones sin incomodar, bueno, el régimen autoritario en el que vivimos en Venezuela.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I'm so sorry, but I could not hear the translation on that one, on your comment. So if maybe someone could, if the translator could maybe put something in the chat so I can read it.
I can quickly do a summary of what Anna just said, but I'll be shorter. So Anna was saying that one of the biggest challenges that they face right now is that she finds that people are a bit tired, that they produce a lot of content, but they're a small team. I think she said around less than 10, but they produce podcasts, they produce infographics, they produce a lot of stuff, but she feels that probably because of the pandemic, people are tired and it's difficult to get them interested.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's pretty universal and one of those circumstances that unfortunately, we're all facing. I'm glad to hear you talk about that. Was there anyone else who wanted to share something that a problem that they are facing?
Solo, Rafael, ¿puedes hablar tú? Por si acaso voy a hacer yo las traducciones de las preguntas de español a inglés.
Claro,
See,
pues les puedo comentar que, bueno, creo que ya les he dicho que somos una fundación con ya 25 años de historia y hemos pasado por distintas etapas, distintos momentos en comunicaciones. Creo que en algún momento publicamos un boletín y era muy bien recibido. Era la época de los boletines impresos, se enviaba a diferentes, diferentes instituciones. Bueno, comentarles que nuestro tema es medio ambiente, ¿verdad? Y pues, digamos, así fuimos creando nuestro público. Pero en los últimos años, digamos, nos ha faltado una persona propiamente comunicaciones, porque nos quedamos, digamos, diagramando nuestros informes y enviándolos, distribuyéndolos por una lista de correo electrónico y no hemos aprovechado muy bien las redes sociales. Todavía digamos, hay ciertas dudas entre el personal más antiguo del think tank, ciertas dudas sobre si redes sociales es un buen canal para unos productos que típicamente han sido de interés para una audiencia más vinculada a tomar decisiones, a cooperantes en el área de medio ambiente, niveles técnicos de ministerios como agricultura o de medio ambiente o estudiantes universitarios, digamos. Entonces, hay un poco de dudas en eso. Ese es un poco como, creo yo, la dificultad, cómo encontrar el tipo de presencia que necesitamos en redes sociales.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we just hired, we just started getting really into social media maybe in the last 5 years. So before then, we did not have a person dedicated to social media, and then we invested in having like one person completely focused on social media. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. And I see John Torres asked, how do you monitor the audience responses to the content you are producing? Do you use software or digital tools for that? We lack monitoring tools for this purpose. I'll talk a little bit about that as well, how we track progress. So let me go ahead and let's get going. So where to start when you're thinking about content strategy? It's always going to start with your audience. And I think we've all realized this, that think tank audiences have really expanded in recent years. Audiences are no longer only insiders. So the previous commenter was talking about, sending newsletters, and they're not sure about whether, it's worth doing social media. Is that really the best way to target policymakers? I would argue that with social media, that the universe of audiences has expanded, and we now need to focus a little bit more broadly in terms of who we need to target. So this graphic kind of shows you how in the past, you could just focus on those insiders, the people who are working directly in policy. Nowadays, you kind of need to go a little bit outside of that circle to people who maybe aren't directly involved, but tangentially involved. This is kind of another way of thinking about it. So it used to be that, think tanks could have like a direct line to policymakers and the journalists and media. Now with social media, there's like a third point that you have to focus on, which is this public and social media presence. So it's really about hitting those three targets, which it's challenging. It adds a lot more work on our part, because now suddenly, we can't just, it just means that there are a lot more things we have to produce in order to cater to each audience. So, in today's digital environment, people are consuming content in all kinds of ways. Now we have to compete with everyone else on the internet for attention, and research can no longer remain buried in a report if it's going to make an impact. We have to start thinking about more creative ways of relaying the information. And there's all kinds of possibilities in terms of how we do this, which, it is a lot, it's more work, but it's also more fun. I mean, I think this part of the job is very, you can get creative, and this is where I think, we were talking about audience fatigue, and people are just, so tired of, maybe they're tired of just reading, long reports. I think there are some ways that we can maybe address that by thinking more creatively about how we present our research and making it more engaging for people, and hopefully not so tiring on their part. Let's see. I'm just going to. Sorry, y'all. I realize you can see my notes, but hopefully nothing will be too surprising there. This is a quote by John Schwartz, who runs a digital agency for think tanks. He wrote, "Start creating content at volume that advances the debates where you have expertise, that responds to what your audiences are talking about, where they are talking about it. Content that is engaging and helpful. Take a risk on publishing content that does not conform to your party line, but pushes the discourse forward." And he's written a great blog here that you can read later more about this. But this idea that, think tanks are now responsible for producing more things and being more engaging to their audiences. This graphic is a great way of kind of more specifically understanding who we're targeting. I know at my organization, people who don't work in communications are oftentimes, oh, this is for the general public. Well, that's like one of the most annoying things to hear on my part, because even the most popular TV show is not going to reach everyone. Every single thing has an audience, a specific audience. You cannot reach everyone with everything. So, and it's not worth our time and effort to try to go after everyone. So we really need to use our time wisely and create things that are specifically for the people that we care about and that we can get the most return from. So if you see in this graphic, on the bottom axis is how strong your audience has a relationship to you. And then on the y-axis is how much influence they have in public debates or in policy. So, you know, you can think about the bottom left corner, sort of, you know, people who probably don't follow politics at all, who don't know who you are. I mean, those are people that it's not going to be worth your time really going after them. In the top right corner, of course.
Melina, 1 second to cut you. Could you change the view so we see the big slides more? I don't know if you need to switch to presentation mode or when you share your screen.
Oh, there we go. Is that?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I hope that'll help you see this a little bit better. So in the top right corner, we have, you know, those are the people, the real VIPs, you know, those policymakers who know about who you are, who have a lot of influence on policy. You know, and that maybe is what would be defined as the traditional audience. And now we've kind of need to go a little bit to the left and maybe a little bit down a little, you know, people who maybe aren't necessarily as involved or directly involved with policy, but can still have some on what those policymakers are doing. So when you're thinking about who you're trying to reach, it's helpful to actually make a specific list of the kind of, you know, don't just say policymakers. Think of specific groups that you want to target. And these examples, these are from the US, like our organization, the Council of Economic Advisors is obviously really important to us, staffers for congressional committees. In your organization, maybe local elected officials are very important. You know, news media has always been a big audience for think tanks. And then think about who else could you bring into this conversation. So we're talking about community organizations, maybe some businesses in specific sectors, universities, trade organizations, or it could even be, you know, personal contacts of your organization. And then, you know, we think about social media networks. Those are ways to draw in those and find new audiences as well. So, and expect debate on your audiences. I'm not saying you're going to be able to decide all this in one sitting. In fact, we talk about this constantly at our organization, and there's always, you know, some debate about whether, you know, should we really be creating, you know, things for students? Like, how important is it that, you know, somebody on the street knows what a trade deal is? And, you know, it's going to be up for debate, and you'll kind of have to kind of go with what you got. But, you know, especially researchers too, some researchers may not value expanding your audiences as much. But as communicators, we know that creating content that appeals to more people will help influence debates more. If you can get more people educated on your issues and talking about it, and you'll be able to influence the debates that way. So next, I'm going to talk about sort of a new content model for think tanks. This is sort of the old way of thinking about it. So, you know, you do your research, you write your report, you do all this stuff to promote the report. And that was how we used to think about it. Now, you do your research, you come up with a story. What is the story from your research? And then you create a bunch of different products to communicate that story. So instead of, instead of focusing solely on that one research report, it's more about getting the message out there in whatever format it takes. And this way you're not so tied to that one report. So at our organization, this is kind of an example of how we've incorporated this in our strategy. So an author wrote this report. This was back when, during the Trump years, when we were in this trade war with China. And so he did some research and found out that China was lowering their tariffs for everyone else except the United States. So this was a very interesting finding. And so what we did was we created a standalone chart from that research. And, you know, it linked back to the original report, but a lot of people only saw this graph. Like, you know, not as many people are going to go back and read the report, but a lot of people saw this graph, and actually it made it on CNN. So, you know, being able to pull out that finding and make that part of it really shine will help get the message out there much more effectively. So this is a great way to kind of think about how a variety of products can reach different audiences. So on the left-hand side, you can see the pyramid showing how the products rank from complexity. So obviously, you know, at the top, you have social media, which is the simplest kind of medium. And then you go down the list and it kind of gets more complicated and more complicated. And now at the bottom, you have the technical report, which, you know, not saying that technical reports are bad or anything, but, you know, they have the meatiest, you know, most substantial kind of information in there. That being said, those reports have the fewest amount of people looking at them, right? It's only the people who are most interested, who need to know all that level of detail. It's kind of our job to think more on the levels going up above to think, how can we make that message go out to the broader audience? So, you know, thinking about blogs or op-eds, social media, that kind of thing. When you think about content too, you want to know how it fits into your organization's overall goals. And I'm sharing here the goals at our organization that we came up with. The goal 1 is to reach. So making sure more people, you know, they might not have read a report from us, but maybe they've heard of the Peterson Institute. Did they see it in a news story, or maybe they were searching online and they saw a report from Peterson Institute? Those kind of things for us are important. It just builds our credibility if the more people who know about us. Our goal number 2 is to convert people. So the audiences who are receptive to our kind of content, we want to make them regular consumers of our content. So we want to grow our email list, social media followers, podcast subscribers. Our third goal is to engage. We want people to actually be sharing the content, helping us promote the content. This helps strengthen the authority of our research and our scholars. And then finally, you know, all these things kind of work together to achieve the final goal, which is to influence policy. So, you know, we leverage our credibility and our relevance to shape public debate and make smart policy recommendations that are valued, cited, and adopted by policymakers. So content fits into this whole strategy of what we're trying to do overall as an organization. How will you measure success? These are kind of some metrics that we look at. It's very time consuming. So, you know, you can pick a few that maybe are more valuable for you, like such as maybe just paying attention to website page views can help give you a gauge of how popular something is. I know for us, we've made more of an effort to build our email subscribers recently. So that's a number that we're paying much more attention to. Social engagements. So engagements means like when someone likes or shares or replies to something that you posted. Impressions, social impressions, that's when someone just sees something. So if you're scrolling down a feed and they see your content in the feed, that counts as an impression. So I mean, all of these kind of measurements, you know, some of them might be worth more to you or less, but we kind of track all this to see how we're doing. And I can talk a little bit later about maybe some of the tools that we use to measure this. Data is so powerful, and being able to measure how well your content is doing is just, you know, great for showing off to your funders. It's great just internally to see, you know, that you're being successful with what you're creating. This graph just shows the number of Twitter engagements we've had in the past 2 years. And, you know, you can see these big spikes. Those were actually big projects that we did that really resulted in like huge growth in engagements. This measurement on the right is called engagement rate. And basically that's a way of kind of controlling for the sizes of organizations. So obviously like a bigger organization than us, something like Brookings, they are, you know, much bigger than us. So they're always going to beat us on total engagements, right? Because they are just producing more things, they cover more topics. The engagement rate kind of puts a benchmark that we can compare others to others to see how well we're doing in terms of getting engagements. And this measurement here shows us that we're actually doing really well on at least getting a lot of return on the work on the content that we are putting out there. So our followers are more likely to share or like or reply to their content. That's what that measurement is showing us. I would like to just pause for a second. I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions on what I just covered right now. And if not, I can keep going. Let's see. David.
There are some questions. There are. David, if you want to start, and then Rafael.
Hi, hello, Melina. I'm David from CEDU. It's a center of research and education. More about if you have some key or other objects to follow and measure. Lo voy a decir en español. ¿Alguna herramienta para dar seguimiento a la medición del éxito? Is only media?
Yeah.
Is only media statistic?
Okay, yeah. So for the website, we use Google Analytics, which is free. It does require, you know, you have to put like a little tracking code on your website on the pages so that, you know, every page has like a way for Google Analytics to grab the data on how many people are visiting. And we use we use this Google Data Studio to kind of pull together the data from that and from Google Search Console, so we can see how many people are actually coming from Google specifically. On social media, we use a program called Sprout Social. However, Twitter also provides its own analytics tools that are free. So you can go in there and track, you know, the measurements that I mentioned before. we kind of take all those and put them in a giant Excel spreadsheet and just track it by month. Let's see, on the news citations, we used to do it by hand, and that was a lot of work. Someone had set up Google Alerts for the name of our organization and also the names of each researcher. So they would get a Google alert whenever something was cited, and this person would put it all in a spreadsheet. If you have the funds, we now invested in a software program called Meltwater that tracks all our media citations, just because we have thousands and thousands of media citations a year. So that's just, it's been worth it for us to save the time to do that. If you're a small organization, maybe Google Alerts will work better for you, or will be fine for you. Let's see. And I think, oh, the email subscribers, you know, whatever program you're using to send the emails, you know, we use a program called Pardot, and we use that with Salesforce, and that's how we get the data on our email. So I think all these platforms, they have a way for you to track the data, and maybe some of them are a little more annoying than others. And I think the challenge there is just making it a regular part of your process to look at the data and you know, make a record of it somewhere so that you can see how well you're progressing. And I forgot who else was.
Melina, could you write this after, like, the list of all the resources that you shared? They seem like a really interesting group, and so we can share that afterwards.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Great. Rafael, and then Olga. I don't know how many questions you want to take, Melina.
Just, yeah, 2 more, it's fine.
Okay, great. So Rafael, Olga, and then we continue.
Okay. Melina, thanks for all these insights. I wanted to comment about, to ask you something about a slide you just show us that talk about the 21st policy communications model. And you contrasted with the traditional model. In this new model, between research and the reports and the social media content, between those steps, there's a middle step that you call the story. I wanted to know, what is a story? Is something you have to write? Is something the researchers must engage with, along with the communications team? What is exactly that story?
That's a good question. So the story is not like a physical product that you have to write, but you know, it's the actual message or the takeaway from the research. So if you want to write it down, that's fine, and that could be helpful. And a lot of times, you know, you kind of, the communications team is the one that kind of figures it out. I know a lot of times we'll get a report and the editor's like, well, what's the point? What's the point of this report? And the researcher's like, da, 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 da. Oh, here it is, down at the bottom of the report. That's the point. This is what we're trying to say. Okay, let's pull that up at the top now. And then, you know, we have a meeting amongst ourselves. What's that report about? Oh, it's saying that, oh, we should be doing this because, you know, that the other thing is a bad idea. Okay, great. We all know what the story is now. Everything we do, the tweets, the video, the infographic, the social media, like everything is now going to reinforce that point, maybe with more or fewer details. But you kind of need that central message there to permeate everything, and that's how you get more impact from the report, because otherwise it's kind of all disjointed, you know, and you want everything to reinforce what the research is really what the point of the research is.
So it's like the key message.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, it could just literally be like one sentence. You know, when we're having a meeting with our team, you know, a lot of times some of us don't have time to read every single research thing, so we have to ask, you know, what's the point of this report? And being able to just sum it up really fast is what we ultimately what we really need.
Okay, thank you.
And I think there was one more question.
Yes, but she said that that was exactly her question. So what you just answered in the conversation that you just had with Rafael.
Great. Okay, so the next part, I'm going to talk about content formats. And this is a quote from an interesting study about what do policymakers want from us. It says, policymakers believe that the most important contributions scholars can make are not as direct policy participants or trainers of aspiring government employees, but rather as informal advisors or creators of new knowledge. However, severe time constraints limit their ability to use such scholarship in any but its very briefest presentation. So this was a study that, you know, surveyed a bunch of different policymakers, and essentially what they're saying is they don't have time to read a long report. You know, I don't know how many times we have to tell people like make it shorter, make it shorter. You know, we have to be concise and get the point across faster. This is kind of a way you can think about content formats and how you develop content. So at the top, we have what we call the core content. So, you know, this could be that initial research report. And I mean, at our organization, we've kind of, sometimes even like blog posts have become core content. So it might not necessarily be like an actual PDF report or something like that. But the idea is you have that substantial report, you pull out that story from the report. The second layer here is blog content. I don't know how many of you guys have blogs, but for us, they have paid off so much. Most of the traffic on our website comes to blogs. And these are just ways we can shorten, you know, summarize what's in the core content, or, you know, maybe we just create a blog about something that's recent that's happened, like something that broke in the news, and then we can link back to some older research that was done a while ago. But they're just like faster and easier to do. And then from there, you can think about something called micro content. So, you know, pulling out those graphs, doing little graphics, little short, easy videos, things like that, you know, again, it supports that story that we were just talking about. And that, you know, you can see how the story will travel and convey through all these different products. Think visual. Visuals, I mean, everyone just loves visuals. They help, you know, grab people's attention. They help people understand better. They help people actually pay attention longer. You know, this little chart here, adding visuals to your social content increases engagement. You know, why it works, you know, when people see a picture, it's just your brain just gets it way faster than having to read something. You know, attention spans these days, they just keep getting shorter and shorter. And let me tell you, the pandemic has not helped. You know, it's even more important that we try to grab people's attention and make things easier to understand. Here you can see, I just took a screen grab of our Twitter feed. Almost every single, I mean, virtually every single post has some kind of image associated with it. And, you know, we've done a lot of visuals in the past 2 years. We've actually tripled engagements in 2 years by incorporating more visuals. And whether that's like a photo, it could be a photo. We've done these graphics and data visualizations. These are just some more examples of visual content. A researcher wrote a paper on how COVID vaccines are manufactured, and this is a very complicated process. And can you imagine explaining all of this in text? This is way easier to see how exactly the supply chain works. This was clipped from a podcast that our president appeared on, and that was just a way to kind of draw out some of the main points from his there. And this one was a very easy graphic we did. It just, we took a blog post and literally just like pulled out the 10 main points and put them in a graphic like this. So it's just text. Data visualizations really pay off. If I were to recommend 2 areas for you to look into if you have limited resources, that is to create blog posts and data visualizations. Data visualizations are really, they are a true value add for think tanks specifically. We have access to the data and insights that news organizations do not necessarily have. So this is something that we can uniquely contribute to public debates, and putting things in this visual format, just, people are way more likely to pay attention to it. So here you can see the House Budget Committee in Congress. They noticed this graphic and they shared it on their Twitter account. This graph was shared by Ronald Klain, so Biden's chief of staff, saw this. That graphic I just showed you before on those supply chains, COVID supply chains, they got featured actually in the New York Times by Paul Krugman. So, they are really good at improving the understanding of the research. So our organization came up with this idea, we call it PIE charts or pie charts. Basically what we do is we pull out one chart from, whatever, it may be a paper or whatever. It could be like just a standalone graphic as well. And we put like a catchy headline on it. And we put maybe like a few paragraphs of text, just kind of summing like what's happening here. And these have become so popular on social media. And, like policymakers have noticed them. They're just so easy to understand. This middle one kind of, it's a little more educational. We've promoted that with universities to kind of, use it as a learning resource for students. On the right, it's not really a data visualization, but it's just like a nice illustration, which, it's eye-catching, and it kind of, this was a nice way of communicating the findings from a study about logistical hurdles for vaccines. So you can just kind of see it in the pictures, and it's nice to look at. So when to create a video. Videos are great for explaining things. And, we've talked to educators, and a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, do you have any videos? Like they just love showing videos to students. They're also great for just grabbing like short, catchy quotes for social media. And you don't need to make it fancy. You can literally just grab the clip. Like you don't have to do anything really. One option, you could add subtitles. Adding subtitles can help grab more people's attention. But one other thing too, you can tag the speaker. So if you have an event and you grab a quote from someone who has a lot of Twitter followers, and then you post that video and you tag them, and then they share it to their followers, like you have like instant access to their huge audience. A particularly good speech. Videos don't necessarily always have to be short. This image on the right, like our president gave this really great speech on Brexit, and it just went viral. And we created different versions of it too. Like there's like the full length version you can see here. This one's 26 minutes. We created a 12-minute version and we posted that on Facebook, and that one went viral. So if it's good, people will watch it. Videos are also good to add like a personal touch. So, you know, when you read a report, you don't see anyone's face, you don't hear their voice. And sometimes it's just nice to hear from someone, especially if they're very good on video. And then, you know, usually you do want to stay under about 3 minutes long, just because that's kind of where people's attention span is these days with video online. As I said before, don't neglect blog posts. You know, generally about 500 to 800 words. Incorporate visuals if you can. They're just faster to produce than a PDF. It's easier to respond to the news, and you can link to longer research pieces. Interesting fact, we get more than triple the page views from blogs in our publications. So, you know, they are a great way to expand that audience that you guys, some of you had said you were having challenges with. These are just 3 blogs that we posted. First one, that one is based on a monthly data release. So that one, you know, we literally, we're up in the morning and the data gets released and we need to turn it around in an hour in order to make the news cycle. So we kind of like created a template for that, and that's just, that blog post is just a way we can like very quickly get that information out there. And then the middle one, it's actually not any different from what was in the research brief. We just literally took a longer, you know, collection of reports and then just pulled one of them and turned it into a blog post. Sometimes just making something a single standalone blog post, you'll get more traction that way. I think because Google will bring more traffic in. If you have like a title, like people are searching like COVID vaccine, then they, you know, you're more likely to be pulled into this than that longer research report. And then finally on the right, this was just, you know, a standalone piece that was following up on a previous piece of research. So again, referencing those vaccine supply chains. So this is a quote from a book that I recommend called Elevate the Debate. At its core, blogging is important because more people will learn about your work and actually read it. A 10 or 20 page document can still intimidate some readers, even those already engaged in your subject. So blogs are great. So next, you know, you want to consider how content will be distributed. Will it go on your website, social media, presentation? Typically at our organization, pretty much everything goes on our website, except for, we do create like social media specific things. So, you know, like that quick 30-second video clip, we don't bother putting that on our website because it was really meant for it to be a social media clip. And, you know, other times we have graphics and stuff that it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to put it on our website. Different channels will have different audiences, different tones of voice. You know, on our website, we write in a certain way. On social media, it's a little bit more casual. You know, we use emojis sometimes, and sometimes we have fun with like memes and stuff. Is it mobile friendly? So this is another data point that would be good for you to find out, is how many people are coming to your website on their mobile devices. I think with ours, it's maybe 30 or 40%, and it keeps growing every year. So we always have to make sure everything is usable on a phone. Create a guide with all the specifications for the specific outreach channel. It's just really annoying to have to keep going back and looking this up. So just find the sizes so you don't have to keep going back. And sometimes they change, so you also got to pay attention to that. You know, Twitter wants a certain size, Facebook, all that stuff. And then also the same for your website, you know, knowing the ideal sizes so that they look good when you post them. So how to improve your existing content. So content needs substance, and, you know, some of this obviously is not really our job. Like hopefully your researchers are doing some of this, but you know, these are the kind of things, you know, we look out for when research comes our way. we keep our eyes open for these qualities, because we know if there is something here, it's more likely to do well. So if it makes a new point, it's surprising, unexpected, counterintuitive, is unique, provides a useful analysis of data, relates to current events, improves public understanding, or if forecasts, any of these things, we'll do extra work to try to maybe promote it, because we know it'll do better. Edit, you know, move the main point to the top. You don't want that main point buried down at the bottom of your paper or blog post or whatever it is. Avoid or define jargon. Researchers just love jargon. You know, my theory is it makes them feel smarter. So, but our job is not to alienate people. So we want people to understand what you're saying. So we're constantly saying like, well, what does that mean? Is that, you know, what is this? If our team can't understand it, no one in the public is going to be able to understand it either. Relate research to current events. Why does this matter? So a lot of times, you know, someone will write a piece. I think a good example of this recently, someone wrote about anti-corruption strategies for the Biden administration. And, you know, the Afghanistan pullout had just happened, and he hadn't connected the two. And so we were like, well, doesn't this relate to what happened in Afghanistan? And he was like, oh, yes. I mean, so, you know, tying the two together helped draw more traffic to that piece. And then keep the length appropriate for the intended audience. And as mentioned before, shorter tends to be better. Not always, but a lot of times. This graph shows you how much of our traffic comes in through different sources. So a huge amount of our traffic comes from Google, followed by direct, which just means, you know, a link. Someone may have clicked a link in somewhere, like typed in the URL. And then we have social media. Actually can't remember what link means now, but I think the main point is that the Google searches are like dominating for our traffic right now. So when I say improve SEO, that means search engine optimization. And the ways you can really get more traffic from Google: always use commonly searched keywords and headlines. Put text on the page instead of only in PDF format. We're actually still working on this ourselves, so don't feel bad if you don't do this, but if you can, it's helpful to just put the text in the web page itself instead of locking everything into that PDF you have to download. Include the keywords in your page metadata. Link to your other content and encourage other websites to link to yours. So linking is just a great way to build up Google rankings. Yes. Oh, what is the meaning of SEO?
Yes.
Search engine optimization. So this is like one of those marketing buzzwords that it's a way of improving your Google search ranking. So if you type in, you know, food insecurity, and your report shows up on the third page of Google results, you're not going to get very many clicks on it, right? If you show up on the first result of the first page, by far, most of the people who search for that keyword will click on yours. So it's really about, it's a competition. You're competing against everyone in the world to have your stuff show up when people type in that keyword. So that's how you should think about search engine optimization, is it's a competition. And you want to get your stuff up there, higher up than everyone else out there for the specific keyword. So when you write about something, don't, I have a couple examples coming up, but you know, vague headlines where, you know, it's like, what is this about? You know, if you're writing about China, you don't include the word China in the headline. Like Google doesn't know what you mean. So you have to be like very literal. and think about like, what would people search for to end up on this report? So that's how you can think about keywords when you're editing pieces. And then, yes, writing about topics that you can win the search competition. So I'll show an example of this in a minute, but again, keywords, it's just a competition about whose stuff shows up higher. So this is kind of an example of a headline that a researcher wrote: how to repurpose a COVID-19 vaccine supply chain to get 1 billion shots. I noticed this headline said nothing about the company that the researcher was talking about. So I had to edit that. You need to put the word CureVac in there, because if someone were to Google CureVac COVID or CureVac vaccine and wants to learn more about it, you gotta have that keyword in there. And then I also, this was a little bit catchier. Don't let the CureVac COVID vaccine supply chain go to waste. Why is climate change denial a feature of right-wing economic nationalism? It's a little clunky and long. Right-wing nationalists tend to deny climate change. Okay, that's a good headline right there. If someone were to Google nationalist climate change, all of those words are there, and you can read it and understand what this piece is about. Another reason to raise the Fed's inflation target. This title doesn't say, okay, what is the reason? What is the reason? So just adding another reason to raise the Fed's inflation target, and employment and output boom. So just adding a little bit more context can help too. This is an example of 2 newsletter subject lines that we sent out. It was an A/B test. So what that means is our program, you can set it up so that like it'll do like a send out to maybe like 1,000 people and see who or how many will click on the first version A, and how many will click on version B. Whichever one wins, it'll just send that version out to the rest of the list. So this is just an example of showing you how important it is when you word things. So the first version A, when the chips are down, protects semiconductor supply chains. Version B, semiconductor chips are down, trade war to blame. This version B got 5% more opens. And what was interesting is that actually 41% more click-throughs. So people who open version B were actually even more likely to click and read that story. So being able to word headlines in a more catchy way can really help you drive traffic. Improving your data visualizations. This is a big topic, and I recommend this website here, policyviz.com. There's great resources there on data visualizations, but some main points there: always have a title that explains what is happening. It just helps reinforce what you're seeing in the graphic. Remove unnecessary data. You don't necessarily always have to show everything. We want to edit down to what you actually need. Choose an appropriate graph type. So whether it needs a bar or a line or scatter plot or whatever it is. Annotate where helpful. So that means adding little notes if it helps you improve the understanding. And then use color, text styles, or other visual markers to draw attention to the main findings. So, and avoid clutter. You don't want to like put too many things in there. So, this is just an example of, a researcher came up with this graphic. It's a little hard to understand what is happening here. Japan's COVID-19 stimulus packages. This one is a much more traditional bar chart, so you can see, oh, okay, like there was a big one in May 2020. And then you have these levels here that are showing what they actually announced. So it's just easier to understand. This one, obviously, it's not a data visualization. It's just like a table. And, you know, it's hard to see exactly. You know, it takes you a few seconds to kind of go through like, oh, it looks like recreation went down the most. Here, it's much more obvious. You can see down at the bottom how services, the pandemic, you know, we put the headline on there, the pandemic led consumers to spend more on goods, less on services. Okay, so now, you know, this will hopefully be the fun part. Ideas for new content. Use what you got. I mean, not everyone's gonna have time to write an original piece all the time. And, you know, sometimes, like our organization, we deal a lot with, you know, economics news. So it can be pretty fast paced. So for example, this story broke, China applies to join Pacific Trade Pact abandoned by Trump. So for us, this is big news because we cover this topic a lot. But this happened like a week ago. We don't have any recent material. We haven't written about this trade deal in a few years. So, you know, how do we respond to this news event? Well, a researcher found an old presentation he made, and he just went through like 2 of the slides and just updated some of that data. He sent it to us. We quickly created this chart, and then we just posted that on social media right away. And you know, it's not like a deep analysis, but you know, it kind of gives a little context for what's happening with this deal. And then a few days later, the researcher writes the blog post, and we create a PIE chart, which is released simultaneously. So, you know, you kind of create things as you can with what you have. Wherever you can, just try to turn data into a chart. You know, this on the right is, you know, you can just see what's happening so much better. And I find that the chart on the right, you know, it's so much faster. Like you can just see immediately how that data is changing over time. Data trackers are another content idea. So we've had a lot of success with this. On the left is our monthly tracker of unemployment rate in the US. And, you know, that the unemployment rate is a measure that's widely reported on. You know, every month there would be a headline story about unemployment rate. Our researcher came up with his own way of calculating it, which is more realistic. So it's like his sort of unique take on that data. And, you know, this gets cited by the news every month. So they, you know, people are now expecting it, and it's become a regular thing for us. On the right is a tracker of China's purchases under the phase 1 deal, which was the deal brokered by Trump. And, you know, this also, you know, gets a lot of news hits. Even, you know, we're not really writing a whole lot to go with this. It's just literally like numbers. But, you know, these data trackers are great for journalists because they want to pull a data point to put in their story. And so, you know, you don't, you know, your research doesn't always have to be like this giant thing. It just be like a few numbers that can get cited somewhere. This was an example. Well, you know, when the trade war was happening, it was just so fast paced and it was so confusing, and like a lot of stuff was happening. So I worked with the researcher to come up with this timeline so that we could literally just track what is happening. And, you know, it's not like this is in-depth research, but it's a really useful, it was really useful at the time for a lot of people. And, you know, we can use our expertise to decide, you know, okay, what's important to put in here. And then, you know, the timeline was great too, because then we could link out to other pieces of research. So, you know, this is just, you know, an idea. of something that you could possibly do. And we created this using a free tool. The link is here at the Night Lab. And we just built it using Google Docs. Another way you can think of content ideas is to take advantage of existing interest. So we use Google tools a lot to see how people end up on our website. And as you saw before, Google is a top driver of traffic. We saw in recent months, there were a lot of searches for Washington consensus. And people were ending up on our website on kind of some random pages. And we were like, well, let's build a better page for them to end up on. So we just wrote this new guide. What is the Washington consensus? Because that's probably what most people are looking for on Google. And so that's helping to drive more traffic as well. And so utilizing that data helped us. And here we have government testimony. We just, we take, when an expert is called to testify in front of Congress, usually they have, a long text-only report, and our team goes through it and just pulls out, what are the main points that they're trying to make, and then we just build this little graphic to put on social media. I can tell you most people do not watch committee hearings, so this is a good way to actually, not only to broadcast what the messages were, but just kind of show off a little bit, like, hey, we're important, policymakers are listening to us. Even events can be source material. We had a big conference a few years ago on inequality, and it had a bunch of big names, and there was a lot of content, material people were presenting. So our team kind of looked at everything that was presented at that conference, and we built our own, what we call a microsite. So it just means kind of like a long form story with lots of graphics and stuff. And so we were able to write this based on what was presented at the conference. This is an example of an explainer on an issue that is central to our mission. So, especially if you have like a niche kind of topic area, there's probably not a whole lot of competition on Google for that. Like for us, our organization, we're obviously like globalization is our thing. Like this is what we do. And so we were thinking, why don't we just make a guide to globalization, and it'll be super easy to understand. We're gonna aim it at students, and it'll be able to link to a bunch of our different research. And this has become a huge success for our organization. And I'll talk a little bit about the advantages of this. So, when you create like kind of this big centerpiece story like this, it gives your organization reputational authority on the topic. So, if you can get people to say like, oh, have you read this? What is globalization piece from the Peterson Institute? It's like, we're the ones who wrote it. We're the ones getting the authority on that topic. Links to and promotes your other work, will attract a wider audience, especially if it's very engaging, and provides an educational tool for the public. Obviously these things, we don't make a whole lot of them. So we want to think strategically about what topics we want to cover, but we just thought this would be a good resource for the public. And just, talk a little bit more about this piece. It was written by the comms team using a recommended list of reading by researchers, and it uses videos, charts, interactive timeline, illustrations. It ended up becoming the #1 Google result for globalization. So this is by far the #1 content page on our website. And in the first year of publishing, most people were spending about 18 minutes on that page. So that's like incredible when you think about it. Most people don't spend that much time reading things. And it took us about a year to produce. So, I mean, it is a big project, but it was worth the investment for us. This was an example of a video that was on that microsite. I'll just play a little bit of it so you can kind of see. But
Does it have sound, sorry?
yeah, sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear it.
No.
No.
Maybe you have to share your screen and put the sound for share sound.
Okay. Maybe I'll just put it in the chat.
Okay.
You guys can watch that separately. There's a narrator who's narrating it, but the idea is, I mean, it's very basic. It's not like a complex, you know, piece of research, but this was like an explainer, you know, and it's explaining how trade, you know, results in, you know, at the end there, you can kind of see how they compare when they trade, you know, trade versus no trade. You know, with trade, you end up with more things at the end. And this was, you know, obviously it's very educational, and we ended up sharing it with the St. Louis Fed. They have like a educational curriculum that they do for economics students, so that for them. Oops. This was another social media video, and you know, it's just an animated version of a graph we did, and this did really well. You know, people just like watching watching things like this. You kind of get the idea of that. So I just want to take another moment here to pause and do an activity with you guys, where we're going to just read a very short report. It's on COVID-19 and global food security, and this was written by the Congressional Research Service. And I put the link in the chat at the beginning, but let me go ahead and see if I can pull that up again for you guys. And we're gonna go into breakout rooms. And basically what
I can share the link, Melina, don't worry.
Okay. Basically what I would like you guys to do is just split up and take a minute to read this report and just, you know, come up with some recommendations of how you would try to create content for this report. And, you know, it could be anything really, just whatever it seems appropriate.
There's some questions, I think, if we have time to take them, or
yeah, okay, how much time and staff for the animations? Animations are very time consuming, and I will talk, the next section of my presentation will talk a little bit about level of effort for things, but it's not something we do very often, like very rarely. So, you know, you have to just think about whether it's worth the time and effort for you. But you know, we have a very talented digital on our staff, and he actually knows how to do animations as well as graphic design. So I guess we got kind of lucky because we have someone on staff who knows how to do it. Yeah, I mean, it involves like writing a script, and then you have to, you know, someone has to draw all those pictures, and then you have to animate it. So I mean, it could take like a month of work. But we thought it was important for that globalization piece specifically, because I mean, that was such a big project. You know, we wanted that to invest the time for that particular one. Was there another question?
No.
Okay. So I guess if you can help me with the breakout.
Yes, they're ready. Just whenever you say go, we can will be assigned to the groups. You can present either in Spanish or in English. Depends on what you like. If you present in English, it'll be in Spanish. It'll be a delay for the translator to translate back to Melina. So yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to stop in every breakout room, but I was just overhearing, you know, some of the ideas you were all coming up with. You know, we don't have time to hear all the ideas, but I'm just wondering if maybe we could hear like 2 or 3 quick, you know, things that you are considering doing with this piece to help expand the audience, expand the outreach for it. Would anyone like to volunteer to talk about their idea?
Do we move through the numbers of rooms or?
No, just whoever wants to say, because I don't think we'll have time for everybody. No tendremos tiempo para que todos, for everybody to present. So just a selection. So who would like to share what they come up with their groups? I think we'll have time for 3 groups.
Okay, we have 2 major ideas. The first one is that the general content is so heavy. So the idea is to open the content in the different digital formats according the audience and the profile. That's the key strategic way to manage the content. And I believe that all the rooms had shared some channels like Twitter, like Instagram, like LinkedIn, etc. So that's the first idea. And the second that opened a nice debate is, do we use TikTok?
That's a good question. I will, let me save that for a little later if we have time, because I have a funny story about that. But does anyone else want to share an idea of what kind of content they would produce from this piece? There's no right or wrong answers, so I just, you know, this is brainstorming, and you know, what you'll find is when you're in a team and you're thinking of ideas, you know, sometimes some will be more feasible than others, and you kind of just have to go with what you're able to do. Yes, go ahead.
Sí, nosotros pensamos en varias opciones, por ejemplo, y dependiendo de a quién se puede, a quién se quiere llegar. Por ejemplo, una idea que decíamos era tal vez como ver cómo esto puede llamar la atención de periodistas a través de un comunicado de prensa. Pero platicándolo un poco mejor, nos decía, pensamos que sería bueno un video, porque el tema en sí es como muy heavy, como dijo, muy árido. Tiene que ver con legislación para la cooperación internacional, con muchos detalles técnicos legislativos. Entonces pensamos que un experto con capacidad de comunicación podría hacer un video corto explicando esto. En eso pensamos.
Okay, so I think I understood that you wanted to create a video because the text was just so heavy. I think this topic probably lends itself well to a video because, you know, food insecurity, you know, there will be lots of imagery that will evoke emotions, right? And so, you know, you could do a video. I would say, you know, videos are a little bit more time consuming. So, you know, you have to think about, well, is this report worth it? Or is this kind of just, you know, you kind of have to weigh what's the priority of this report, or you know, maybe food insecurity is a major topic of your organization, and this is actually a good idea. You know, you want to do the effort to do a video. You know, not saying that it's good or bad, but just, you know, these are the kind of considerations you have to think about. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen again and kind of just talk about what I was thinking when I read this piece. So my first recommendation would be to publish this as a blog post so that the text can appear in HTML format. It's just easier for people to find it if you put it in a blog post. You know, and you don't even necessarily have to edit it. I mean, you could literally just put the exact same text in a blog post. If you have time, that would be great to kind of, maybe you could shorten it up a little bit. You know, definitely want to add a photo to the post that features people, you know, having faces, kind of, you know, when you share this story, it just helps to have some kind of imagery associated with it. I thought at the end there, if you saw, there was a whole long list of food insecurity programs, and it's kind of hard to read all that in a paragraph. So I just thought maybe just putting in a table in the blog post could just help you more easily understand what it's saying. And then this is a sentence, I think one group, you know, you kind of identified this as something that stood out, but the reports of the UN World Food Program estimates that up to 265 million people may face acute food insecurity by the end of 2020, a 96% increase from its 2019 estimate. So I wrote this tweet. It just says, the pandemic worsened food insecurity for an estimated 265 million people in 2020. Are US global food security programs sufficient to address the urgent need? And then I created this graphic here, just pulling out those data points. So, you know, if there was a 96% increase, that means in 2019 it was 135 million. So if you just see the two bars next to each other, it kind of just, you know, it's just a little bit more attention grabbing. And then I added this title, COVID-19 has increased global food insecurity by 96%. And then you have like a subtitle here. This is the estimated number of people facing acute food insecurity. I have the source down at the bottom. And then, you know, you attach this image to the tweet, and then you link to the blog post. So this was just, you know, one way I was considering about of promoting it. So, okay, the next part I will try to run through pretty quickly here is how to execute good content strategy. So this is kind of more about logistics. One good exercise for your organization is, what are all the different types of content that you produce, and how long does it take you to do each one? Do you have a variety of things, or is everything really labor intensive? You want to have easier, shorter pieces because, you know, these days everything is so fast paced, and, you know, you're expected to just kind of keep putting out content constantly. So you need to think more realistically about what it is you are able to produce. That graphic I produced before, it just took me a few minutes. I used a free program online to just build this graph. So, you know, quick and easy. Nothing, everything doesn't have to be like super fancy. You know, another good idea is to create sort of a menu of options. And this is good to share maybe with researchers too, and everyone get on the same page, like, okay, this kind of thing, this is going to take us like a month. This chart, that'll just take us a few days. And you know, everyone, you know, even your boss, like, you know, sometimes people don't understand how long it takes to do visual content. This will kind of get everyone on the same page. And it also, you know, reminds you like, oh, how about we do this product for this thing? So kind of, yeah, you just remember what the options are. As I was saying before, level of effort is going to vary widely depending on the format you pick. So here, you know, you can see that animated, let's see, there's like motion graphics, explainer videos. They're very dynamic, so they're going to be really eye-catching and engaging, but they're very high cost. So you got to think, okay, we can't do that, but maybe we could do something, we could scale it back a little bit and just do, you know, some kind of static graphic. Another important thing is just improving the collaboration with your researchers. So ask them to send you drafts earlier so that your team can start thinking of other content ideas. So show, and when you do create something, show them the data and evidence that your approaches are working. This is a great way to get buy-in from them. You know, show them like what you're doing is worth the time and effort. Show initiative with your own ideas. I have found that researchers are often receptive, but they just don't have time to think of anything, or they don't have the creative, you know, thinking skills to really go there. So, you know, a lot of times we just have to approach them with what we're an idea that we're coming up with. Use their time wisely, figure out as much as you can on your end before asking them to help or to review something. At least at our organization, like our researchers are always like so busy with, you know, writing up stuff. And so like, we're just trying to get everything to as far as we can, and then we bring them in to review. So doing as much work on our side. And then if you're ever unsure, do not publish something without their approval. Hopefully you guys have never been in this situation, but we always, you know, have researchers review content. If it's not like pretty obviously from the piece, you know, if we're ever unsure, we always, you know, better safe than sorry. Improve communication within your team. You need to decide on a workflow for new content production. Who needs to review it, and when are they going to review it? How will you organize all your files so that everyone can find stuff? You know which ones are the latest updated files. Someone needs to keep up with research being published. It helps having someone on your staff just dedicated to like just literally reading what's coming out. And you must have a project manager who knows what is being produced and which stage of production. So it kind of like keep all the pieces in order. And this person needs to be included in all those project emails. How to design on a budget. If you're unable to hire an in-house designer, consider a freelance designer or an agency that specializes in data visualization. They can, at minimum, come up with templates and styles you can reuse. So, you know, this is just a great way to save time and money, is making templates. And then create a style guide to make your charts consistent. So if you end up having to do things yourself, you know, it can kind of look a little sloppy if things don't have the same look and feel. So try to keep everything consistent with same colors, you know, match your branding, same fonts, same sizes, you know, keep it consistent. These are just some examples of do-it-yourself tools. Like the chart I showed you earlier, I just made out an infogram. Some of these, like Tableau, I think cost money, but you know, some of these have like free versions. You can kind of explore what's out there. There's a lot of tools out there. Keep some kind of calendar. You know, sometimes there's an important event coming up. You know, for us, there's the COP26 event happening on climate change. And we know we're gonna have to like come up with something on climate change, like in the week leading up to that. So this having some kind of schedule will help you make sure, you know, you have like a constant stream of content coming out. It's just helpful to, obviously, like more content usually results in more attention. You know, you're going to get more views, you're going to get more shares, like more people are going to hear about you. So being able to just produce more things helps, and keeping track of it all in a calendar is just really helpful. This is just an idea of like how we produce things. This is like our content production team. We have 3 editors, and I lead the digital production team. So underneath me, I have a social media manager, I have a digital content producer, and a digital designer. And they're always, you know, checking in with me. I'm like reviewing things before we post it. And then, you know, we have a print designer, and then we also have someone helping us track with analytics. So just in conclusion, these are my main takeaways from today. Decide who you want to reach. Make sure you have content types that appeal to your audience. Allocate time according to how important each audience is. So, you know, for us, we have decided that we do want to reach students and educators, but they're not our primary audience, so we're not going to spend as much time producing stuff for them. So it's just about using time wisely. And then create goals so everyone is on the same page. Expand your content types. So develop shorter pieces to supplement longer research. Explore a variety of content types that need both low and high level of effort. Incorporate visuals and data visualizations as much as possible. And then create templates for each type so you can reuse concepts. You don't want to have to keep thinking of fresh new ideas every single time. Sometimes it's just easier, like, okay, it's a blog post with this, we're going to do a pie chart. Like, you know, as making things automatic can also make your life easier. You don't have to think of something like super creative every single time. And then track progress and adjust your strategy. Pay attention to key metrics. Don't be afraid to experiment. If it doesn't work, just try something else. And then do cost benefit analysis for more time intensive ideas. I think there was questions about metrics. I will try to send some resources on that specific topic. I mean, there's a lot to cover there on metrics, but just being able to measure, it's just, and then, you know, you see something that's working, it's very exciting for your team, and like, it gives you more motivation in your job. And like, I think it just helps, you know, when our team has a success, you know, we report it to the president and he shares it with, you know, the researchers. Everyone gets really excited, and it's just a big success for the organization. So yeah, and I hope you guys have fun, because this is, I think, the most fun job at our organization is, I think, being on the communications team. So, and I'll just leave it there. Is there any remaining questions that I did not cover? Oh, someone mentioned TikTok, right? And I just want to say, we have never tried a TikTok account, but we did try an Instagram account, and it was a huge fail for our organization. So don't, you know, it was just, it was a time suck. It took so much time for us and not very much return. So we just quit on the Instagram. But you know, I can't say, maybe someone else will have luck with TikTok. We, you know, it's something we could think about.
Thank you, Melina. Any other questions? I know that we've been very kind of active on the chat, asking for the names of everything that you've been sharing. And I've seen people writing frantically. I've taken a lot of screenshots of what I should be doing as well with my own works. I tend to write the really long, boring report titles that you shared. So I'm going to speak with my comms team to incorporate all of this. So this has been really interesting. I know we're out of time, but if anyone has any pressing last question, maybe we can take it.
Someone asked, what is the name of the free tool in the graphic in the blog example? I use Infogram.
There's a question on the appropriate engagement rate for Twitter.
So typically anything above 1% is a very good engagement rate on Twitter. So if you post something and you're seeing more than 1%, you're doing a good job.
Thank you very much. And I think I echo Alejandro on the thanks. It was a great presentation. Thank you very much for being with us. Would you mind taking out your share screen so we can have a final group image?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see everybody there. And
I just want to clarify, sorry, on that Twitter engagement rate. There's an engagement rate that will be available to you on your Twitter account. That's the one that I'm referring to when I say above 1%. The one that you saw in the presentation where we compared to other organizations, we had to adjust the formula because you can't look up that information. It's not public information to look up like how many engagements another organization has. So we adjusted the formula a little bit. But I think, can I share this presentation with everyone and they'll have all the links there, or?
Yes, please. We'll ask for the presentation to upload to the internal website of the group.
Okay, great.
And if everybody can quickly turn on their cameras just for one last goodbye and thanks to Melina. If we can join me in a virtual clap, I think this has been a great session. So thank you very much for being here.